First off, I like to say that in my opinion, Gus is definitely the best survivor in the game. He can protect both his teammates and himself, which makes him very good. He can completely remove all the damage he receives in just one ability and strike back with a stun right after. Unfortunately, a lot of Gus players are so bad that they make me want to throw my computer out the window, so I'm making this simple guide for a beginner Gus players so that they have a starting point on how to play Guest. I'll be going through how to protect your teammates and how to deal with each killer easily, but first I have to talk about his abilities. Guest's abilities are quite simple. His block is basically a shield. It won't let you take any damage unless you're being hit by mass infection up close. Just remember that you don't need to look at the killer to block. Successfully blocking will give you a punch that, if used right after you block, will turn into a parry, which is a swift small dash forward and will stun the killer for 3.5 seconds upon contact. Remember that while you're parrying, you gotta aim at the killer, and if you miss, you're basically guaranteed to be hit. If you save your punch, you can do a small Shidlesky like stun, but with a bit more charge time and only stuns for about 2 seconds. His charge ability is a bit more complicated and also kind of broken. Gas doesn't only like dash forward for about 5 seconds if he doesn't hit anything, but if he hits the killer while charging, he will gain resistance 5 and push the killer for like 7 stars or something. Disable their abilities for around a second. Instead, if he hits a wall, he'll gain slowness 2 for an amount of time based on how far he is from the killer with 15 seconds max. Also remember that while you're charging, you do not have resistance 5, and the killer can very well hit you while you're charging. This is useful for protecting both yourself and your teammates, but I'll talk more about it later. Parrying is extremely hard to do if the killer knows what he's doing, or if you have a hack ping. If you want to parry, I recommend blocking and spamming the punch button to be quicker. I also recommend using shift slot to aim at the killer, but that's just preference. Jason is one of the easiest killers to parry, but he is fast, so you have to be quicker and very precise at aiming. You just have to block, aim at him, and parry immediately, or he will most likely just dodge your parry. Jason is literally just brain dead stabby stab, so he's quite easy to predict. But good players will also try to wait for you to block and do a gashing wound. If you're playing against a good player and they're waiting for you to block, you should wait like 2 to 3 seconds while you're in the hitbox and then block. This also works for basically every killer, as it's the best counter because the killer will most likely wait a bit, he'll think that you won't block and then attack you. Parrying Cookie is a whole different thing. I will never parry Cookie because with him, the strategy is just to loop him a lot and always block when he dashes. This is just an infinite loop of you blocking and punching. Something very important is that Cookie's cooldown on his dash is 20 seconds, but the block's cooldown is 24 seconds. So you have to somehow buy time to get your block back before he dashes. If you're unsuccessful, just try to dodge the dash. Make sure to never get hit by corrupt nature and always keep a good distance from him. To do this, you can easily keep punching him every time he dashes. I recommend using punches behind corners like with 2x stabs. Unless you're playing with a skin that has a very loud punch. Parrying cookies is very hard because his M1 is almost instant and his linger is very short, so you can barely predict it. As for Jun though, parrying is quite easy. You can react easily to his M1 because of his long wind-up duration. So if you have low ping, you can just walk into his M1. One thing about parrying John Doe is that you will most likely get the corruption effect when parrying John Doe, so you lose health to parry, which can be very frustrating if chased for a long time. You can also block the spikes to not get any damage, but it won't give you a punch. 1x1 is with no doubt the hardest killer to block, not because his speed is insane or his M1 is unpredictable, but because all of his abilities are unreasonably hard to predict and it's basically a full-on anti-gas loadout. It's quite easy to parry because he's low, but it's just so hard to block. His entanglement can counter your block, his mass infection can counter your block, and the unstable eye as well. If you miss your block, he will do entanglement, which is a guaranteed hit. If he predicts your block, he can do mass infection up close, which does an outrageous damage. And he can easily beat you with his unstable height that you may confuse for an M1. With that said, he's extremely easy to parry, but definitely the hardest to block. Just try not to get baited is all I can say. Wait for him to use both of his moves and then try to get an easy parry out of him. I'm making this video right after the Noli update came out. I managed to gain a bit of info on how to counter Noli, but I can't really say much about him. His M1 is very easy to react to because it's slow and his dash is easy to block. It's not like cool kid though. I like to do a thing I call wardrobe guest, where you block Donley's void rush while getting exactly in front of him so he bumps into you and then you can parry him. Charging is kind of mid but also quite useful in some cases. It works as a secondary small boost to make cast a bit better. There are a few ways to use charge. While helping your teammates, you should use it to either make the survivors gain a bit more distance, or you can also use it to disable the killer's abilities. One good use for it is also pushing the killer as he M1s to make him miss the attack. To help yourself in chase, you can use charge as a block. Basically, you can charge during the killer's M1 to get the normal M1 hit boost but still get no damage. One thing you can do with charge is, when the killer is on a ramp, you can push him downwards and he will be sent flying. It only works if you push him down though. You can also do this if the killer is near the ledge of a platform to push him off, making him fall, like in this clip. The best mindset for a guess is to help the player at all costs. But when you get to low, so I mean like less than 50 HP, you shouldn't use a medkit, which is why in my opinion, Eliots and guests should have the medkits and not Shidlatskis. Please, stop. I get that you're a brain dead Shidlatsky main, but I can't stand you using a medkit when you have 2 heals available. Stop it. In conclusion, a good guest player is supposed to help his team at all costs, especially other support characters. Guess it's all about teamwork, strategy, and skill all at the same time, which makes him one of the most skillful survivors in the game. But even when he's by himself, he can use his abilities to his own advantage, playing like a normal Sentinel would, to make sure he doesn't die in the span of 20 seconds. He knows how to do a few gas attacks correctly and how to manage his hit prevalency when he's around other teammates. Although he's one of the best survivors, he doesn't get carried by his abilities. He still needs basic knowledge on how to survive chases, manage his stamina, and common sense to survive. Guest is a very strong character. His abilities are skillful and balanced. The only thing I could complain about Guest is his charge ability. For so much cooldown he gets so little, with so much punishment. I'd be happy if the devs somehow reworked his ability to make it a little better, or just buffed it somehow because it's not that useful in most cases, especially while helping your teammates. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If this video gets even a few views, I'll probably work on more guides about other Forsaken characters or mechanics. I'll definitely improve my videos in the future, my editing, the footage, and especially my English and accent. If you have any questions about guests or things that I didn't talk about, you can ask in the comments, and I'll most likely reply. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the guide and you think it was useful. Also subscribe if you want more guides about Forsaken.